Brand new polling numbers are out. You know, Americans dislike almost every single presidential candidate. There is one exception, Senator Bernie Sanders. A new NBC News Marist poll out today shows Sanders, he's the only candidate with a positive favorability rating in the state of New Hampshire. That's right, Sanders is also the only candidate with a positive favorable rating in Iowa. Hillary Clinton has a net favorability of -19. Donald Trump is at -28. Meanwhile, some politicians and inside the Beltway media folk, well, they just don't have faith in Bernie Sanders. We've been hearing it for months.
This is why Bernie Sanders will not be the Democratic nominee. Not enough strength with minority voters. Hillary Clinton still has that. He is consigned to have a lot of difficulties because he has so little support among African Americans and Hispanics.
And the broader point, of course, is that Bernie Sanders, while also will not become president, just like Donald Trump will not become president, he does strike a chord, not just with Democrats, with many Americans who are left behind.
They say the same about Bernie Sanders. Passionate followers can never win a nomination.
I think Bernie is too liberal to gather enough votes in this country to become president, and I think Hillary Clinton is going to be a fantastic president.
He is not remotely electable, and this is the problem. I guess the question is, do the Democrats really want to do to ourselves what the Republicans did to themselves with Mitt Romney?
Bernie Sanders has had upward momentum since the day he jumped into the race, but of course all the experts are disregarding that. The guy is drawing huge crowds all over the country no matter where he goes. Just an indication that I guess he's on a roll. Sanders is climbing in the polls. Nobody else is like Bernie. In New Hampshire, Sanders is only 10 points behind Hillary Clinton. Since February, the senator from Vermont has picked up 19 points. Hillary Clinton has lost 27. In Iowa, Hillary Clinton is up on Sanders by 24 points. Although since February, Sanders has gained 18 points. Clinton has lost 19 points in Iowa. And there's a new CNN poll out today showing more good news for the senator from Vermont. Bernie Sanders, it shows that Sanders is beating Jeb Bush, Donald Trump, and Scott Walker head-to-head in a general election matchup among all Americans. You mean a socialist is ahead of some Republicans? We should also point out that Clinton beats all three of those Republicans by wider margins. But whoever thought Bernie was going to get this far? No one in the mainstream media expected Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, for that matter, to be doing this well. But there is clearly no comparison between the two. Sanders is doing well because he's a strong issues candidate and has a populist position on issues that affect American families and American workers, and he's got a record of talking about it for decades. Trump's appeal is this. He ain't known by anybody, and he's got to give an unvarnished opinion on anything, and he's been just giving us this entertainment flavor in politics that we just haven't seen in politics in a long time. What's refreshing about Bernie Sanders is that he's earning these numbers by what? Not bashing Hillary Clinton. He's talking about the issues, and he's not running TV ads because he can't afford them. Believe it or not, we have got a positive candidate on the national scene. I would like to see all the other shows across the cable spectrum on all networks try to find some negative comments from Bernie Sanders. He points out the differences he has with other candidates, but he doesn't rip him a new one. And I think that's interesting. On the other hand, we're getting all the entertainment value from Donald Trump. We got more of that coming up later in the show. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Tonight's question, is Bernie Sanders being underestimated? Go to pulse.msnbc.com/ed to cast your vote. Bringing the results later on in the program. For more, let me bring in John Nichols, Washington correspondent of The Nation magazine, Genevieve Woods, senior contributor to The Daily Signal, and Jonathan Alter, MSNBC political analyst. Great to have all of you with us tonight. John, you first. You have you've been to a number of Bernie Sanders events. In fact, you introduced Bernie in Madison in front of some 10,000 people. Does the Beltway media, are they not understanding the Sanders appeal and surge? Break it down. What's happening here?
Well, of course they don't understand it. And to be honest, I don't think I expected it to be quite as dramatic as it has been. You know, when I introduced the senator in Madison, I said to folks up front, look, I'm not here to endorse him. I'm not here to tell people how to vote. but I am here to talk a little bit about why this moment matters. And the key thing that I tried to drive home to people, and that I continue to try to drive home to people, is that this has very little to do with Bernie Sanders and a great deal to do with the movements that have developed since 2008 in this country. We have a $15 wage movement. We have a passionate movement to overturn Citizens United. We have really passionate movements to say that we've got to hold these too big to fail banks to account. This is real stuff, and there are millions of Americans who've tuned into these issues over the last 5 or 6 years, and they want to hear somebody talk about it. Bernie Sanders is talking about it. I'll give credit to Martin O'Malley. He has started to get very serious talking about this. But this is where it's at. And the reality is that this campaign is going to come down to these issues, not just in the Democratic primaries, but also as you head toward 2016 in November.
Jonathan Alter, does Sanders have room to grow? Is this going to stall? Or it seems like the closer people look, the more they like what they see. I may be wrong on that, but that's what the numbers show. What do you think?
No, I think he does have room to grow. Look, if he wins Iowa and New Hampshire is right next to his home state of Vermont, he is a big factor in this race. Hillary Clinton will, in all likelihood, still beat him in the big state primaries and go on to win the nomination. But he could be a big factor, and I think he unquestionably will push the center of gravity in the Democratic Party to the left. You can already see it in the economic speeches that Hillary Clinton has made. She hasn't come out for a $15 an hour minimum wage yet, but she's going to be under intense pressure over the course of the next year to do so. And watching her respond to that pressure will be a major theme of the next year. Yeah. And it also, you cannot rule out, I think the categorical statements right now that under no circumstances can Bernie Sanders win the nomination or the election now have to be removed. It's still extremely unlikely, but there is a path conceivably to his winning. I mean, the Democratic Party could, in this election year, nominate a very left-wing candidate, the way the Republicans did with Barry Goldwater in 1964. Yeah. It could happen. Then if you get in a three-way race with Trump, Scott Walker, and Bernie Sanders, I know some people are going to think this is nuts, but it is not entirely 100% impossible that Bernie Sanders could be the next president.
Oh, I think it's very possible he could be the next president. I think it's very possible he could win the nomination. And to take somewhat of an issue, or may I point out, all of the positions that Bernie Sanders has taken are populist positions. I mean, the majority of the country, I mean, so when you say that he's going to be moving the Democrats to the left, aren't we a center-left country? I mean, if you look, I mean, you're polling well when it comes to minimum wage, collective bargaining, do something about Wall Street, Citizens United. These all poll in the majority. So how is that moving the country to the left, Jonathan?
No, it's moving the debate within the Democratic Party to the left so that it is more in sync with where the rank and file of the Democratic Party are, as you quite rightly say. The problem is this. The Republican Party at the state and local level has never been in better shape since the 1920s. Why is that? It's because this Democratic majority that we're talking about on all these issues, they don't show up in midterm elections. They have to show up in those midterms, and they have to show up in greater numbers even in the general presidential election, especially for those down ballot races. Get involved in those races. Otherwise, that gap will continue to exist between what the polls show and what our politics are reflecting.
Genevieve, when are the Republicans going to realize that the Trump headache isn't going to go away with a couple of aspirin? I mean, when are they going to realize that, Donald Trump isn't running TV ads right now because he doesn't want to. He doesn't have to. I mean, this guy is, when do we call him a force that the Republicans have got to deal with?
Well, I think a lot of Republicans would tell you he does have to be dealt with. I don't see a lot of people walking around. They may say, yeah, he's not going to get it in the long run. This will eventually peter out. But I think most Republicans at the senior party type level are concerned about Donald Trump. They're concerned mainly because not just his poll numbers, but the fact that he's attacking so many others that are running alongside him on the Republican ticket. I think that's the biggest problem with Donald Trump right now. It's not his 20% in New Hampshire, whatever the numbers are as of today. I think it's more that he's making such disparaging remarks about his fellow GOP candidates.
Well, that's competition. I mean, he's trying to win this thing. I mean, he's pointing out.
But as you rightly pointed out, Bernie Sanders is doing pretty well without having to attack Hillary at every turn. But that's because I think Bernie Sanders actually has policies that he really believes in and wants to run on, and he'd rather talk about that.
I agree with that, but it's also Bernie Sanders. It's in his DNA. He's never run a negative ad in his entire career. This is who the guy is. Trump, of course, is an attacker. And he doesn't care who he's going after. Let me ask you about the debates, Genevieve. Is there going to be, or do you foresee, some type of a Republican strategy to discredit Trump in the first debate, to draw him out on issues? Because it seems to me that all of those candidates have been attacked by him in one way or another. It would seem to me that they would go right after Trump and try to get him where he's vulnerable and do it early. What about that?
Well, I think that's probably going to be the strategy of many of the candidates, but the tough thing is going to be here, as you well know, this is not a 5-hour debate. What is it, 90 minutes? You're going to have 10 people on stage. So at best, people are going to have 2-minute responses, 1-minute responses. There's not going to be a lot of time. So that's going to be the tough thing, is that Trump, frankly, won't have to have a lot of specifics because he's not going to have to give a 10-minute speech or a 20-minute rebuttal on anything. He's going to have to talk in 60-second sound bites, which he's very, as we all know, good at doing.
Yeah. John Nichols, Bernie Sanders has not addressed Hillary Clinton's unfavorable numbers, the trustworthy number. Is he going to do that, or is that just not going to be a part of the campaign?
I don't think it's going to be a part of the campaign, Ed. I interviewed Bernie Sanders, and I asked him specifically. What I said was, look, there's a lot of people who say you can't get to that sort of next level in the campaign unless you attack Hillary Clinton. And he very bluntly said back, I'm not going to do that. And I think that this is an important thing to understand. You said it's in the guy's DNA. What I would say also is that many of the people who underestimate Bernie Sanders don't recognize that this guy has run this style of campaign in the state of Vermont for a long time, and at first he didn't succeed. It took him time, but over time he convinced a lot of people, including people who aren't liberals, that this works. To be on issues works better than to attack.
Jonathan Alter, can a guy win the nomination not running a negative ad? I mean, is that possible in American politics?
Sure. I mean, it's refreshing for a lot of people, especially when you see the example, as Genevieve pointed out, of Donald Trump. You know, every time Donald Trump attacks another Republican, it makes Bernie Sanders look better by being above the fray and focused on the issues. And, you know, it's not like people are going to think, oh, he's not running attack ads, so he's not a tough-minded guy, because he's sounding very tough on the issues, not on the personalities. And that's extremely appealing, not just to a lot of Democrats, but to voters in general.
Yeah, can I just make one point there on that, Ed? I actually did a conservative talk radio show in New Orleans today, and a couple of people called in who went to go see Bernie Sanders when he was in Louisiana, and they found him refreshing, and these were conservative Republican voters who just were surprised. I think part of it is, you know, a lot of the country has not known of Bernie Sanders. I think he's a well-known guy inside the Beltway, but outside, not so well. And I think people do kind of find it refreshing, which I think also speaks to people are just tired of the same old, regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat. And that's one reason Hillary's not doing well. And I think it's one reason, unfortunately, in some cases, that Donald Trump is doing so well.
The candidate Sanders, Bernie told me a few weeks ago that he was not going to give up on the South. He thinks that the Democrats can make some real inroads down there, and he's going to work it.
There's a history of populism down there, Ed. The South was the home of populism originally.
Absolutely. Great discussion. Appreciate your time, Jonathan Alter, John Nichols, Genevieve Wood. Appreciate it.